Am I going to get the same answer?
Know that students benefit in their math learning when teachers emphasize concepts in instruction. Through middle school, students begin to see increased difficulty in math concepts, which makes it more challenging for them to accurately describe the concepts in depth. In this video, we see an example of a teacher in our project guide her students to be able to explain the conceptual understanding behind multiplying and dividing by a fraction. The strategy that we will be investigating is discussing the mathematical reasoning that underlies a procedure.
To me, that really kind of means making connections with the kids between like what they're doing procedurally and how it's represented, where they see that, and really making those connections, explicit. In my classroom, that looks a lot like making the models. We do check our work. We use the algorithms and the equations for it, but then we try and connect back to, well, where did that happen in the model? Or why did that work with this? What does that number actually represent and mean? When I'm targeting EAC 3, so I'm really focusing on, we need a model, and then that procedure and connecting that procedure to that model. And when that procedure with each of those steps, making sure that it's visible for kids and that they're making those connections between those two versus just one and the other.
Students were asked to complete a card sorting exercise. They were given a context card, and they had to find a card that matched the context from the model and expression cards. Once they found a match, they had to create either the missing expression or model for each context, and then solve each problem.
The biggest hurdle that I noticed a lot of the kids had was realizing if it was a multiplication problem or a division problem. They'd look at it and really struggled with realizing what they needed to do with the numbers, which then was really surprising once they started to figure out, or they would just take a path. They go, I think it's division, and they just kind of jump in with that. And then they'd get an answer and realize that didn't make sense, which then would force them to go back. And they try the other strategy, and they go, okay, this makes sense. And then that would sometimes help them get to the model.
Mrs. Poppins divides those students, only 3/4 of the students, into two.
Yeah, this is
So 3/4 divided by 2
okay.
is 3/8, just like the other one. Because half into two teams, that'd be half of 3/4, half of the way.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
The big aha moment when I knew EAC 3 was happening with my students was towards the kind of more end of our discussion. We were solving or showing our strategy with the bar model for one of our expressions, and the kids came up with a division problem. It was divided by 2 or something like that. And they were looking at it, and then we came up with a different expression of timesing by a half. And they did not make those connections at first, but they knew both of them were representing that same model. Some of the kids started noticing that's the same thing as our multiplication. And they were able to see that by doing that reciprocal and multiplying, I'm showing that 1/2. And they were able to go back to that model, and they were like, it's right there. And her faces, they were just like, oh my word, it's the same thing. So I'm gonna let you explain it.
Okay, so this 3/4 divided by 2/1 and 3/4 divided by 1/2. You think this works because if you keep changing both this, it becomes 3/4 times 1/2, but it's times, not divided. So it becomes a completely different problem with a completely different answer. But you still, in your mind, think these are the same problems, so you would get the same answer. But then you come down here, keep change flip this. It's 3/4 times 2 1s. Now that would get you over 1, which you don't want because this isn't even 1 and this isn't even 1.
Why is probably my biggest question. Whether it's why did you represent it that way? Why does this show me this? Or how does this show me this? So asking why and how, and then looking at those models and being like, hey, is there a way I can visualize this differently? Is there multiple ways to make a model? That helps them to actually be able to make those connections, and then they can explain why in a more meaningful way.